Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the midterm. If you have specific questions about your midterm, feel free to get in contact with me and set up a time we can talk about it a little bit more in depth. Overall, they looked pretty good. Double check my math, make sure that I added up everything correctly. For the short answer, if you got partial credit, you'll see that number of points off to the left and circled. In some cases, I try to give you an idea of where you might have missed some points, especially with the essay. Overall, the essays looked good in general as a group. But as I said, if you have any specific questions, please let me know. Total up everything, make sure that it is accurate. Let me think. I want to say it was, I believe, I meant to double check this before I left. I believe it was 3 points for each of the multiple choice and 4 points for the short answer, and then 100 points for the essay. I believe that's correct. And so that'll give you some idea if you double check. If you double check and find out that my math is incorrect and actually you should have had more points than what's reflected in your grade, please get in contact with me about that. We might make that change. If you total it up and you find out it should be less, fewer points, you don't need to say anything about that. That's just, it was my mistake, so that's my unwitting gift to you. So if it's actually lower than what the total is, you don't need to get in contact with me about that. As I said, if you have any specific questions about your midterm, feel free to get in contact with me about it. I'll be posting midterm grades later this afternoon. The midterm grades will include, obviously, the midterm exam, will include the ministry reflective essay, as well as any attendance points up to this point in the class. And so that'll be all included. And so I believe those will be available Wednesday, I think is what the midterm grades will be available. Any questions before we begin? Anything we need to, any general questions about the midterm? Don't forget, there's several, over the next couple of weeks, several assignments. Shouldn't be very complicated, shouldn't be very long. The first of those is due on Thursday. That is your research topic assignment, meaning that you have to have your research topic decided by Thursday. The guidelines are on Blackboard as far as what I'm wanting from you about that. So if you're having trouble determining a topic, please get in contact with me. Let me help you figure out which one's going to be best or something that you would be particularly interested in. Remember, if there is a verse or section of verses that you would prefer to do that isn't on that list, I would encourage you to get in contact with me about that to make sure that's something that you'll be able to get enough information on for the paper. Today we are looking to shift gears now. We've talked about different types of sources in biblical studies, many of the ones that you'll be using quite frequently. Now we're going to be shifting into talking more about research and the process of research, finding information, constructing an argument, what are the pieces of a research paper we need to be aware of, citation, all of those kinds of things are going to be a part of that. And so today we're going to start with just a general overview of research and thinking about what research is, what research is not, in those kind of aspects of a general overview before we talk over the next couple of weeks of more specific. So I think the first thing to think of is what research entails. So when you think about the term research, what do you usually think of? What are some of the words or ideas that come to mind? Internet. Okay, internet. What else comes to mind when you hear the term research? History. Okay. What else? That's it. Internet and history. That's all that comes to your mind. Of course, maybe on a Monday morning, 8:30. There might not be much coming to your mind. I understand. I get that. Well, when we think about research, there are a couple of things to, as far as what we're talking about, a couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, research is not only gathering information. We might think of research as I'm trying to find some information about. And so, if I'm wanting to know some particular piece of information, I Google it, or maybe read a book about it. But in general, research isn't just about gathering information. If your paper that you turn in for any class, it's supposed to be a research paper, is just a record of all the things that people have said, and you've gathered this information, you've not really done research. All you have done is compile data. Secondly, research is not looking for hard-to-locate information. We might think of research as being something where you have to go to an archive and dig through dusty materials and to find that interesting information, or you have to spend a lot of time going through different terminology to find that one piece of information that you're just not sure where it is. That's not research. That's investigation. That's trying to dig up some information, but it's not truly research. It's just attempting to find something that you might not know, or that somebody might not know. Research is also not about transporting the facts from one place to another. I found these facts in this book, and I'm putting them in this paper. That's not research. Again, that is information gathering. That is investigation. That is not what research entails. And so if all you're doing in your paper is telling me or telling your professor, here's some information, here's some facts, then you've not really done research. You have done essentially what that professor could do on their own. That he or she could take the time and do it themselves. And so research isn't just about this kind of transporting of facts or words or ideas. So if research is more than just information gathering, whether that's information that is hard to locate, whether that is information that is in a variety of places and you're compiling it in one source, that's not research. So if that's not it, then what is research? Well, first of all, research is about a systematic search. Research involves a process. It is not just kind of willy-nilly, kind of in a chaotic way, looking for information, finding it in a variety of places, and just dumping that into a Word document. There is a process behind it. Additionally, research is about discovering adequate information. If you're trying to make a point, or if you're trying to discover an answer to a question, you could probably find one particular source that would say something. But is that enough to make a claim or to demonstrate something is true? Just because you happen to find one source that specifically said this. We're seeing this a lot in the current political climate, as certain people are trying to make cases based on information found on like conspiracy websites, on certain information that leans one political direction. Well, is that enough information to make a claim about a particular individual, a particular political party, an administration, let alone in trying to write a research paper? And so, do you have adequate information to make a claim? So let's think about this passage that we've been using throughout and we'll continue to use more often over the next couple weeks. The parable of the woman taken in adultery. If you find one source that says, okay, it belongs, is that adequate enough information? Well, I found one source, I'm done. Well, no, because you haven't investigated fully, because there are other sources that make claims that it doesn't belong there. So have you adequate information to make your claim? Research is about objective knowledge. Now, essentially what we're saying here is that even though you as a researcher are going to be adding your voice to information that you've discovered, research should be about information and knowledge that is objective, in the sense that if a reasonable person looked at the evidence you have gathered, they would come to the same kind of conclusions. Now, in the type of research, biblical studies research that we're talking about, certainly there is a very important place for the individual researcher's interpretation, meaning that a lot of our own biases, our own perspectives can influence how we look at and describe data. We're certainly not talking about the level of objectivity like you might get in a science experiment. Right? You're doing research into the properties of a certain element or a certain compound. Right? And theoretically, you would want to have an objective process, objective conclusions, whereby somebody else could do the same kind of research, follow your process exactly, and come to the exact same kind of conclusions. It's not the same kind of type of research that we're talking about. But one of the things that's interesting here is that there's even some things within the scientific fields, even your hard and natural sciences, physical sciences, that you would think are more objective, where you have similar types of problems. So, for example, there has been a lot of research lately that has been called into question because when another group of researchers take somebody else's process and replicate it, it's not coming up with the same kind of conclusions, response, they're not coming up with the same kind of results. And so how much of the actual people doing the research is affecting the conclusions? So while we do that, while our personal perspectives, biases, the backgrounds we have often shape our research, we have to be very careful to try and minimize that as much as possible. Research is also focused on a specific topic. To say, I'd like to know more about the Bible is not a good place for research. In thinking about a topic for a research paper, you want something to be very specific, something that is limited, something that you are able to say something significant about in a short amount of time, a short amount of space. And so you have to be very careful in developing a topic that is significantly specific enough. We'll talk more about that here in a minute. But one of the things that becomes important about this is by being specific about your topic, it allows you to decide what information relates to your topic and what does not. Now, in the case of the research paper you're doing in this class, research papers you might do in another class, when you're choosing something like a passage of Scripture, that's very easy to be very specific with your topic. Right? I'm researching or I'm studying this particular passage. It's when you get into some other courses that it might be difficult to try and be specific about. So, for example, if you are doing a paper for one of the church history classes, well, I want to look at a specific movement. Well, you only have 10 pages to write about this specific movement. And so you probably ought to be more specific about a person or specific about a certain set of texts or something like that. You need to think about specific. Now, you don't want to make it too specific that you can't find enough information, But you want to be specific about your topic and what it is you're studying. While I pointed out that research is not simply collecting information is a part of research. It's very important that before you make any sort of claims, before you make a decision about your information, that you collect it. Meaning that you have to put forth some effort in the research process. It's not something that you can just kind of passively sit by and wait for the information to come to you. That means sometimes that you do have to hunt down information. Right? Follow a process. Again, remember, research is a systematic search. And so as you go through and collect information, that should lead you to more information. And so that is a very important part of collecting, or part of research is collecting that information. But once you have this information, research is not then just dumping it into paper. The research process involves analyzing that data. Right? And so here I have this data about this biblical passage that I'm looking at. What does this data tell me? What is the significance of this data? What, if anything, is the background? What biases are present? What are the consequences? If this is true, then what does that mean? So analyzing that data, taking the time to investigate it, asking questions of it, instead of just saying, okay, here's this data, I'll put it in my paper. Research, though, ultimately is interpreting data. If you do not have an interpretation of data in your paper, you have not done research. All you have done is collected it, recorded it as data. You haven't taken that last step and interpreted it. So here you tell me this information. Here are 5 different facts that I discovered in my research. Okay, so what? What's the significance of all this? What is it that I'm supposed to do because of this? What's the importance of this information? And so in your research paper, it shouldn't just be about, here's the information, it should have some sort of interpretation of that. But then also kind of bringing all of that together. Research is bringing together the data collection process. It is bringing together the analytical process. Right? So I have my data, I'm looking at my data, grouping it maybe. All right, so here are the people that say such and such, here are the people that say this opposite thing. All right, here's some other information. All right? And so now I've got my information, I've analyzed it, I've interpreted it, right? This is what this means. Putting all of that together in a paper. Right? And so that synthetic step is taking the process of collection, the process of analysis, the process of interpretation, and putting it all together in a written form that communicates the information you've discovered, but also the significance and the consequences of it. So research is more than just finding data. It's about that entire process of bringing these things together.